stays our Gauravani Bacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Askatyade Siddharane. So today we're going to read from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 10, verse number 2. So for those who have the text there. Name vidu swargada pravana maharshya ahamadir hi devanam maharshnam cha sarvashaha. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great stages, nor my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages. Purport. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord. No one is greater than him, he is the cause of all causes. Here is also stated by the Lord personally that he is the cause of all the demigods and sages. Even the demigods and great sages cannot know Krishna. They can understand neither his name nor his personality. So what is the position of the so-called scholars of this tiny planet? No one can understand why the Supreme God comes to earth as an ordinary human being and executes such wonderful, uncommon activities. One should know, then, that scholarship is not the qualification necessary to understand Krishna. Even the demigods and the great sages have tried to understand Krishna by their mental speculation, and they have failed to do so. In the Srimad Bhagavatam also, it is clearly said that even the great demigods are not able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They can speculate to the limits of their imperfect senses and can reach the opposite conclusion of impersonalism, of something not manifested by the three qualities of material nature. Or they can imagine something by mental speculation. But it is not possible to understand Krishna by such foolish speculation. Here the Lord indirectly says that if anyone wants to know the absolute truth, here I am present as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I am the Supreme. One should know this. Although one cannot understand the inconceivable Lord who is personally present, he nonetheless exists. We can actually understand Krishna, who is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, simply by studying his words in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Conception of God as some ruling power or as the impersonal Brahman can be reached by persons who are in the inferior energy of the Lord. But the personality of Godhead cannot be conceived unless one is in the transcendental position. Because most men cannot understand Krishna in his actual situation, out of his causeless mercy, he descends to show favor to such speculators. Yet despite the Supreme Lord's uncommon activities, these speculators, due to contamination in the material energy, still think that the impersonal Brahman is the Supreme. Only devotees who are fully surrendered unto the Supreme Lord can understand, by the grace of the Supreme Personality, that He is Krishna. The devotees of the Lord do not bother about the impersonal Brahman conception of God. Their faith and devotion bring them to surrender immediately unto the Supreme Lord. And out of the causeless mercy of Krishna, one can understand Krishna. No one else can understand Him. So even the sages agree, what is Atma? What is the Supreme? It is whom we have to worship. So the text again. Yo vidu swargana pravanam maharshya ahamadiri devanam maharshya sarvashaha. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and the sages. Namo Vishnu Varaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Auravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shinivadi Paskatya Siddharna. Here Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that we can only know Krishna, the absolute truth, only when He actually reveals Himself to us. Otherwise, it's not possible. Because our senses are imperfect. Krishna has explained in the Bhagavad Gita that the material entity known as kam or lust covers the living entity, just like fire covers smoke, or the mirror is covered by dust, or the embryo is covered by the womb. So living entity is covered by different degrees of kam or lust. And therefore, we cannot perceive anything properly. Our senses are imperfect. So the question is, if we have imperfect senses and Krishna is unlimited, then how can we know Him? Part of that is described in the literature, that atakshi Krishna namadi nabraved graham indriyai. This is from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Seva mukhehi jivados swayam evas pratida. That no one can actually understand Krishna with our dull senses. But when we engage our senses in Krishna's service, beginning with the tongue, then gradually Krishna reveals Himself. Now, Prabhupada said, one may be surprised that in order to know Krishna, we have to engage our tongue. Generally speaking, people think that they have to put their body into a pretzel in order to know the truth. But actually, the most important exercise we can do is with the tongue. And that begins with chanting Hare Krishna and becoming submissive. So the tongue has two functions. One is to taste and one is to vibrate. In this material world, generally speaking, we try to control the material nature and we try to enjoy it principally, or at least one of the major organs is the tongue. Of course, the others are the belly and the genitals and other things. But the tongue is the beginning of our material control and enjoyment. Because without eating, then it's not possible to enjoy the other senses. Therefore, if we're eating in a sense of trying to control and enjoy, then we become more and more entangled in the material energy. As Krishna told Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, that the devotees of the Lord, they become free from all kinds of sin because they eat food first for sacrifice. Others who eat food only for personal sense enjoyment, they barely eat only sin. Sin means we become more and more forgetful about Krishna. Therefore, if we eat prasadam, but we eat it in the attitude of service, that the taste that we're experiencing is Krishna, and we're eating this prasadam that Krishna sent us in order to get the energy to serve Krishna, to engage in devotional service. This is the preliminary consciousness necessary in order to make spiritual advancement. No one can actually become spiritually advanced if they don't take Krishna prasadam. They don't recognize that this food should be taken in the spirit of devotion in order to get the energy which we utilize in Krishna's service. The other is to chant with the tongue. And the Nectar of Instruction, Prabhupada mentions that, generally speaking, the conditioned soul, he likes to vibrate his tongue, just like the frog. The frog, he likes the sound of his voice. He thinks he's a great singer, and he's always croaking. He's always singing. But the only thing that his croaking serves is to invite a black snake to come and eat him. Similarly, when we're talking nonsense, when we're talking about things that don't remind us about Krishna, or not words that are meant for Krishna's service, then the result is that we invite the black snake of time to come and devour us. So if one controls the tongue, then naturally one will be able to control all the other senses. It's not only eating Krishna prasadam, of course, but it's also eating with devotion, which implies that we should also chew the prasadam. Otherwise, if we swallow it, we won't be able to taste it. And later on, we'll have some other unpleasant experiences. So that intelligence, that it is actually important to eat in a way that's devotional, which includes chewing the food and tasting it and remembering Krishna while we eat. Therefore, we're supposed to say some prayer like Sharira Avididal Jotendriya Kaya Kal, just to remind us to take prasadam in the spirit of devotion. And of course, Prabhupada also wanted us to wash our hands before we eat. And even if we think they're clean, we should still wash our hands. And afterwards, we should also wash our hands. And we should sit in a clean place. Not that we eat prasadam when we're driving in a car. Just like we shouldn't chant japa when we're on our beads when we're chanting, or on a clicker when we're driving a car. We should concentrate on the driver, or else you might be in your next body quicker than you imagined. So we shouldn't eat while we're walking. We shouldn't eat while we're talking. We shouldn't chant while we're walking. We shouldn't have jibber japa either. That is, chanting on our japa beads, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hey, how's the weather? Ram, Ram, de, 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 de. Hey, Krishna, hey, did you hear about so-and-so? No, Hey Krishna, Hey Krishna, Krishna. We shouldn't have jibber japa. We should try to chant clearly and remember that we're chanting to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his spiritual energy, Srimati Radharani. And that they're personally present as much as for us, they're personally present in their names, but they'll be personally present for us as much as we try to chant with devotion and without offense. So we want to become free from anxiety, then we have to understand Krishna. Now, everyone is in anxiety in the material world because anxiety means that we falsely have identified ourselves with these gross and subtle bodies. And therefore, these gross and subtle bodies, especially the gross one, has a beginning and an end. So everything we're doing, which basically comes down to try to protect this body from suffering, of which old age, disease, and death are primary sufferings, plus other kinds of suffering from other living entities, from the weather, from our own physical structure. So we're always in anxiety because we think that we're this body and our consciousness is focused on this body. And therefore, we always want the body to be in a comfortable position so we don't suffer, or we suffer less. So this is called anxiety, hankering for a nice material situation and always lamenting that it never comes up to the standard that we hope it would come to. Therefore, Lord Brahma well, it's quoted in the Nectar of Devotion, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he prays, Gyane priyasam urapastanamanteva, vivanti sanmukaritam bhavadiya varatam, stane sita shutigitam dhanuvang manobhir, ye priyasam jita jitoktaischilokyam. So our first means of realizing Krishna, having Krishna reveal himself to us, is by engaging our tongue in Krishna service, tasting prasadam, and chanting the holy names. Now, also, Lord Brahma gives us a suggestion how we can get Krishna, how we can inspire Krishna to reveal himself to us so we can know him. As it says, even great demigods don't know him. Even great sages don't know him. As Queen Kunti prays in her prayers that are in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that we're simply ordinary women. How can we know you? Even if the great Paramahamsas don't know you, what is our qualification to know you? So Lord Brahma here gives a suggestion. First he says, Gyane priyasam udapasta, that we should give up this speculation. The famous frog in the well who thinks that his well is everything. And when his friend comes to visit him and tells him that there is a place called the Atlantic Ocean, the frog in the well can only imagine that the ocean is comparable to his well. So no matter how much his friend tries to explain to him the vastness of the ocean, all he can do is imagine it in relation to his well. And as we know, he puffs himself up, trying to demonstrate to his friend Frog, who has seen the Atlantic Ocean, approximately how big the ocean is. And he keeps on puffing himself up and up and up until finally he bursts. To know Krishna, who's knows past, present, future, who's created all the universes, who's in every atom, who knows every one of us, what our previous lives were, and knows exactly who we are now and what we'll be in the future. To try to speculate to know such a person is impossible, not only for us insignificant living entities, but even for Lord Brahma, because he's praying here. And other great demigods and sages, they cannot know Krishna simply by making a mental effort. So therefore he suggests that we give up this tendency to try to figure out Krishna, put him into some kind of category that we can comprehend. Instead, Namanta, one should try to become submissive. Submissive to who? Submissive to the sages who are repeating the message of Krishna, coming into succession. So we should become submissive because we should have knowledge that our senses are limited. We only can perceive a very small amount of reality. And that we're subordinate to Krishna's nature. Krishna has said, Naham prakasha sarvasha yogamaya samavrita. that presently we're covered by his energy called Yogamaya, or external energy, and therefore we do not see Krishna, nor do we see anyone or anything as it really is. All that understanding comes by purification. Only it comes when we have some gyan, intellectual gyan at least, some proper understanding of our insignificant position, and therefore pray to Krishna with some feeling, some concentration, some sincerity, and then when Krishna reveals himself, and in his presence we experience transcendental pleasure, then that transcendental pleasure gradually purifies our heart and reveals to us something which is closer to reality. Then we can understand how we're subordinate to the material nature, that we're not the controllers of even our own body, what to speak of anything outside of our body. All these arrangements are made in our activities by the material nature based upon our desire, by Krishna, based upon our desire and what we merit, what our karma is. Or also based on our sincerity, we try to please Krishna if we're engaged in devotional service. So everyone is subordinate to the control of Krishna. Directly, we're not right now, we're subordinate to the material nature. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Maya dakshena prakriti suyate satcharacharam. Therefore, we have to hear from authorities, those who are giving us knowledge which is not coming from conditioned souls, but it's coming from the absolute truth himself. Jnane priyasam rupastanamanteva jivanti samukaritam vavidya vartam. So who are these souls who are authorized to give us this message of Krishna? Those are the ones who are repeating the message in disciple succession. Anyone who repeats the message in disciple succession is an authorized representative of Krishna. Just like Arjuna, he heard from Krishna and he said, Param Brahma, Param Brahma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. That now I've understood that you're the supreme absolute truth. Because he heard in disciple succession, and now he's saying, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. Now he's revealing that Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. So we have to understand Krishna as Arjuna understood Krishna by the process of disciple succession. And as soon as we hear from the disciple succession and become submissive and are ready to render service to Krishna with a proper submissive attitude, then Krishna reveals himself gradually to the devotee and everything is experienced and therefore understood properly. So Krishna, he's, as it says in the next verse, Yomam Ajam Anadim Cha Veti Loka Maheshwaram Asamudam Samarteshu Sarapapat Muchate. That Krishna is not an ordinary person, he's the cause of all causes. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karna Karna. So Karna means he's the cause of everything that's happening. Nothing happens without Krishna's sanction. And therefore Krishna is Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. As he says in the Bhagavad Gita, he's the proprietor of all planets. So to understand Krishna means to understand that everything that's happening is happening under Krishna's direction, and that everything here is actually his property. Now, another process, which is similar, which is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, entails the same idea, that one has to become submissive, pranipatena, tadvidi pranipatena, pariprashnena sevaya upadeshanti te jnanam, jnaninas tattvadarshana. that to learn the truth, if that's what we're interested in, then there's a process of submission, service, and surrender. Or we should say submission, inquiry, and service. We don't follow blindly, as Krishna said in the other verse, asamudo, but we have to obtain, understand everything with reasoning, and for that we need a person who can explain to us the process of Krishna consciousness in a reasonable way that we can understand. Because we won't actually surrender, unless we understand things clearly. First of all, unless we understand what surrender is, we can't do it. And even after understanding surrender, we have to understand how to surrender, who to surrender to, etc. So that requires a process that Krishna explains. So the first thing is becoming inquisitive. And that's one is interested in understanding what the absolute truth is. We will not search for a person to surrender to. Therefore it says in the Katha Upanishad, Tad Vignanartham Sagurum Eva Vigachet, Shotriyam Brahmanishta. That we should know who to surrender to. If you go to a grocery store and you want to get an ounce of gold, you've gone to the wrong place. You have to know where to get an ounce of gold. Otherwise, you may wind up with an ounce of bread and it may be very expensive. So we have to find out a person who's Strotriya. That is one who's coming into simple succession, who's repeating the same message that Krishna gave. And what's the proof that he's coming to simple succession? Brahmanishta. That he's fully convinced about the supreme absolute truth. So one who comes in the simple succession and has realized Krishna, then we should surrender. Pranipatena. Pranipatena means prakrista rupena nipata, without any reservation. Now, of course, unless we're self-realized, we won't understand who a self-realized person is. And if we hear about the qualities of a self-realized person, one who's actually fully convinced about the supreme absolute truth, it is not so easy, because even if we repeat the message of Krishna coming to simple succession, it doesn't mean that we'll do it with a full conviction, full understanding. It's not simply being stubborn. It's a question of full experience. Therefore, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada writes, or actually Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he explains about two different types of gurus. One of them is called the Diksha Guru, and the other is called the Shiksha Guru. And he quotes verses. He quotes a verse from the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that one should not consider the spiritual master to be an ordinary person. That the spiritual master is said to be a representative of all the demigods. Acharyamam, Vijaniyam, Navam, Manyata, Karichet. And there Prabhupada explains about two kinds of initiating spiritual masters, actually. The guru who initiates one into the mantra and acts like a father trying to help the student develop in Krishna consciousness, just like a father tries to help their children develop. So the spiritual master, he gives the Diksha mantras, and he also tries to help his students develop in Krishna consciousness. There's another called the Acharya, and their Prabhupada said he's in a special category. That the Acharya is not only just giving mantra and maybe some instruction, but he's actually direct representative of Lord Nityananda, the original spiritual master, and or he's a personal associate of Srimati Radharani. So this is a very high category. Now we can expect every initiating guru is going to be on that category. As Srila Prabhupada explained to Janardhan in 1968, when one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers was even criticizing Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada explained that this particular godbrother was not actually qualified to be either instructing guru or initiating guru. And then he explained why. He said that actually the instructing guru, the initiating guru, generally comes from the category of liberated souls. Just like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained, his words, Prabhupada said, are as good as scripture. So generally they come from such exalted, liberated souls, and Prabhupada said they're on the level of Srimati Radharani. That Srimati Radharani has so much love and humility that she always thinks herself to be an insignificant servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. And that she even takes her subordinate sometimes as her guide. As a matter of fact, Lalita Devi, eternally in the spiritual world, is Srimati Radharani's guru in loving affairs. There are others who are not on that platform, Prabhupada wrote to Janardhan. But if they strictly follow the disciple succession, then they can also be qualified to give initiation. So that means that they're working on the liberated platform at least. Hopefully they are on the liberated platform, but even if they're not, if they're working on if they're not on the liberated platform, they still have some material desires, either for protection or for comfort, or they have some questions they want to be fulfilled, how to live more, how to get free from problems in the material world, or they're actually even liberated on the Brahman platform. Still, in order to function properly as an initiating guru or an instructing guru, one has to simply repeat the message in disciple succession and set the proper example of how to serve Krishna on the liberated platform, namely to try to love Krishna without any desire for material return, an expert example of how to cooperate with the devotees to develop Krishna consciousness, and at the same time to distribute it to the innocent and avoid the atheists. So that's the service of anyone who's giving instruction or initiation, especially initiation, to at least try to work on the liberated platform. Now, besides giving the mantra, the energy of Krishna, the training of Krishna, that goes, one of the Shiksha gurus is generally also the Diksha guru, because Prabhupada said that generally the guru who gives initiation is the one who's instructed the disciple over a good period of time and has convinced the disciple about the necessity of surrendering to Krishna. In any case, there are many different, there's possibly in the lives of a devotee, there should be many Shiksha gurus. Anyone who knows more than we do and is helping us come to a higher level of Krishna consciousness is a Shiksha guru. And therefore, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami states that Shiksha Guru Ke Krishna Rasarup Antaryami Bhakti Shesta A Duri Rup. That one should know the Shiksha Guru as my very self. The Shiksha Guru comes as the best of the devotees and as the super soul. So all of us, we eternally have a Shiksha Guru present within us, known as Paramatma. Now, for those who don't want to listen to Paramatma, Maya is also there. Paramatma will supply us with all kinds of foolish, different intelligence coming from the illusory entity, because Krishna and the material nature are side by side, the illusory energy. And when we don't take shelter of Krishna as our guide, then Maya is there to guide us. But we can only take shelter of Krishna as our guide when we take shelter externally through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Now, Shastra reveals the absolute truth to us, but we may not be able to understand Shastra clearly, and therefore Krishna also sends Guru and Sadhu. Guru to explain and Sadhu to explain to us what Shastra says and how we can personally apply it within our lives and understand things properly. Now, we may not take shelter of Sadhu and Guru so much, or sufficiently, or just we may take shelter of Sadhu, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra to some degree, and to that degree, Krishna will help us make spiritual advancement. But Prabhupada also writes in one purport, if we may have a bona fide guru, and we may be attached to a spiritual organization, but if we're not sufficiently intelligent to take advantage of them, Krishna will still help us from within the heart. The only qualification to getting Krishna's help is that we must be willing to do all kinds of service with love. And then Krishna will help us progress on the path of self-realization. So the purport is that we can only understand Krishna by the process of surrender. And surrender means to practically engage ourselves in Krishna's service, especially beginning with the tongue and under the guidance of Krishna's representative. Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and at the same time praying to the super soul within our heart so that we can understand his message properly as being received through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. When we can understand things clear, when we actually accept someone, we accept Guru as an actual representative of Shastra. When we accept Shastra, at least theoretically, is the truth, and we accept Guru that as a representative of Shastra and Sadhus as representative of Shastra, and without any reservation, we're willing to surrender, then we can gradually make progress on the path of self-realization. But it's not blind. We should also be experiencing something in the process. The example is given just like when one eats a meal, that with every bite, one experiences three things, namely satisfaction, alleviation of hunger, and growing strength. So, Bhakti Pareshanu Vyaktir, Anyatra Trika Ekakala, Prapadamanasya Yatashnatasuz, Tushti Pushti Shuddha Kainugasam. So similarly, if we actually are following the process as described by Guru, Sadhu, or Shastra, and actually accepting the guidance of our super soul, the super soul within our heart, then we should be experiencing ever-growing happiness in Krishna consciousness, feeling ever more of the presence of Krishna and his internal energy, Srimati Radharani. and in such ecstasy, be able to perceive even ever more clearly how everyone and everything is eternally related to Krishna. And therefore, not becoming distracted by other conceptions or other motivations other than to progress in Krishna consciousness, to develop more understanding of Krishna and more love for Krishna. That should be our daily experience. If it's not, then we have to pay more attention to our chanting, or spend more time hearing about Krishna and about this philosophy, and try to see where we lack in sincerity, so we can become more diligent about avoiding things that are distracting us from Krishna consciousness. So thank you. I'll read the verse again. The point is, if we understand this process properly and we follow it, then no one will deviate us from the process, or will be cheated by others. So the verse again was Name Vidu Suragana Prahladananda Maharshya Ahamadirhi Devanam Maharshanam Sarvashaha. Neither the host of demigods nor the great sages know my origin, for I am in every respect I'm the source of those demigods and the sages. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj. We have a question in chat Zoom in English. You can read, and Mataji Lavangalata translate for Russian devotees.
Are devotees ever afraid of government abuse, restrictions, etc.? That's the first question. Yeah, of course they're afraid of government restrictions and abuse. But for that reason, they take shelter of Krishna. Chaitanya Bhagavat, Srivas Thakur was being persecuted by the Muslim government, and therefore he had to flee. And he was waiting for a boat to come and take him across the Ganges with his family, so he wouldn't be harassed by the government, who was putting him into danger. No boatman was there. He waited the whole night, and the time was approaching when the government would come. So he sincerely prayed to Krishna to come and save him. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came as a boatman and took his family across the Ganges. So in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Mahapragash, he revealed that. And there was another devotee also, I forget his name, who had a similar experience. So fear, restrictions, whatever, these are arrangements by Krishna, so we can take more sincere shelter of it. And the heavenly planets, generally speaking, they don't have the same problems we have, but they also don't have the same impetus to take shelter of Krishna. Every day they wake up, nice weather, food is fantastic, everyone's friendly, everything's more beautiful. Do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a half an hour service and go swim in the Ganges. So for them to take shelter of Krishna is difficult, because why take shelter of Krishna? They're already in a fantastic situation. But for us, we don't have that situation. We're always in difficulty. And the government is always actually putting us into difficulty. Sometimes we realize it, and sometimes we don't. Generally speaking, the government is run by the businessmen in Kali Yuga, who are simply trying to exploit people for their own personal sense gratification. These technological and other products are not being manufactured for our happiness. They're being manufactured to give those who are manufacturing them the opportunity to exploit us in different ways. And they utilize the government, because the government is simply elected, generally speaking, by what appears to be the populace, the people in general, but actually the businessmen, those who are controlling the finances, printing up the paper money, they finance both political parties, or so many political parties. So the political parties generally are just different, two sides of the same coin, being paid off by the people who are controlling the finances in the world. And therefore, they're always putting restrictions or creating a war or a pestilence or something, further whatever crazy means that they have come up with. Previously in the mode of passion, they were trying to get control, get pleasure from that. And when they get into the mode of ignorance, they get into destructive mode, these leaders. And because people have surrendered to them and performed so many sinful actions, that they themselves wind up in the modes of passion and ignorance and have to suffer the reactions of either working very hard in order to buy useless technological things in the name of so-called happiness, or being forced to suffer through wars and other kinds of things like pestilence or famines imposed upon by the sinful reactions of the followers and the leaders. So the only solution is to take shelter of Krishna. We may try to alleviate the problems by going on a march or whatever, or protesting or write a letter. That may be or may not be effective. But ultimately, the only real ultimate solution is to take shelter of Krishna. If we don't take shelter of Krishna, all the other solutions will simply be blowing on a boil. It may be temporarily effective, but ultimately the problems will resurface as long as people are not engaged in Krishna service and therefore avoiding sinful activities. How to come to the spiritual platform, one becomes afraid of being able to maintain livelihood, maintain body, and fear, anxiety, be purified, transformed. In any case, we're always afraid of maintaining ourselves. The whole material world is existing on fear. Everyone is working hard to survive in this material world, and yet everyone has to leave their body either today or tomorrow. As Marjusir said, ahani ahani bhutani gachanti yamalayam sheshastava ichanti kimascharya matakpuram. The most amazing thing in this world is that everyone is seeing so many other people are dying, so many living entities are dying, and yet ourselves are imagining we're going to stay here forever. Lord Brahma, he lives for one exhalation of Mahavishnu. So just imagine what the day is like of Mahavishnu. How many Brahmas come and go in one day of Mahavishnu. Yet Brahma lives for 311 trillion, 40 billion years. His 1 second is approximately 90,000 of our life, of our years. Is 1 second. So 1 second of Lord Brahma's life, which for him is 1 second. We go through approximately 1,000 births and deaths. And we're thinking we're going to be here for a long time. But even the demigods, they can't figure out how people could be so foolish to try to make some permanent arrangement in such a temporary situation. So we're thinking, as probably one said one morning walk, that if we can live for 5 more years, then our lives will be successful. Actually, our lives will be successful as much as we take shelter of Krishna, as much as we chant without offense, with full surrender. So if there's some major problem that comes up, and we actually have the intelligence and the sincerity to take shelter of Krishna, and therefore Krishna comes to our rescue, like he did for Ajamil, sending the Vishnu Dutas, then that calamity is actually our greatest resource. On the other hand, if we're put into a very comfortable situation, and we forget Krishna, we become complacent, that situation is the greatest anomaly, the greatest problem that we could possibly have. We may think we're enjoying in a comfortable situation, just like Prabhupada gives the example of a pig. We may think that the pig is suffering, but for the pig, he's enjoying. The pig has nothing to worry about. He doesn't need a job. At least in Vrindavan, every pig in Vrindavan is employed. They're part of the sanitation department. They never fire a pig in Vrindavan. There's no unemployment problem for pigs. There's plenty of things for them to eat and clean up. On the other hand, the pig has no inhibitions. There's no laws for a pig. He can have as many wives as he likes. He can find romance even in his sister or in his daughter. Everyone looks beautiful for a pig. He's overwhelmed with love and romance. He doesn't have to worry about maintaining his family because as soon as the pig is there, so much food is supplied by the residents of Vrindavan for his family. So the pig is living very comfortable. He has a place to stay, he has unlimited food. His children, he doesn't have to educate his children, just teach them more or less, what the tastiest food is in Vrindavan, where to find it, and then the education is over. So the pig is living in pig heaven. So anyone who thinks that to live like a pig and enjoy this material world is perfection of life, then the only hope for them is some uncomfortable material circumstance, just like Indra. Indra was the king of heaven, and one time he was cursed to become a pig on this planet. And he had a very beautiful wife. She had a curly tail that immediately excited Indra as a pig. He had his pig family living in a pigsty, and everything was being supplied. So Indra was literally in pig heaven. But one day Brahma came and told Indra that there is some administrative problems in the heavenly planets, and he requested Indra to come back and resume his role as Indra. But Indra refused. He said, how can I leave my family? How can I live my beautiful home I have? I have nothing to worry about here. Everything is being provided. How could I possibly leave? So Brahma said, well, if you don't leave, I'm going to inspire you to come back to the heavenly kingdom in a different way. And Brahma took a sword, cut off the head of Indra's wife and the children, and he told Indra, you're next, and Indra decided he'd go back to the heavenly kingdom. So everyone in this material world, generally speaking, either they're in a comfortable situation and simply want to maintain it, or they're not in a comfortable situation and they're simply aspiring for it. In any case, such aspiration and such enjoyment will not serve one very well for spiritual advancement. Therefore, sometimes Krishna, due to the reactions of people's activities, sinful activities, therefore calamities are there in order to inspire us to take shelter of Krishna. Now we don't have to run into, we don't have to try to create calamities. But these things are coming naturally. But whatever our situation is, whatever we can do, whatever we can't do, still we should pray to Krishna, because that will actually ultimately solve the real problem, which is our repeated birth and death. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for the nice lecture. I had a question regarding the relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple. It said that the relationship between the spiritual master and disciple is eternal. How is that like practically, like because there is birth after birth? I don't know if you could say something about that.
Yeah, the relationship for all humanity is eternal, because we're all eternal.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, as the spiritual master wants to serve as the disciples want to serve the spiritual master eternally, so the spiritual master is serving his disciples eternally. It's a question of service.
Mm-hmm.
These bodies are just, devotional service is not based upon a body, although we utilize these bodies in Krishna service, but it's based upon the spirit of service. So we have a spirit of service towards the spiritual master that's eternal, and the spiritual master has a spirit of service towards his spiritual master, and therefore he takes the service to his spiritual master, being a spiritual master to others. Then the relationship is eternal with us and all the other devotees too.
Mm-hmm.
Does that explain it?
Yes, most of it. Just I was thinking, like, what about, for example, my previous life? Did I had also this relationship with you or another spiritual master? Like this was.
Well, we have a relationship with all the entities as servants eternally.
Mm-hmm.
We think that we don't. As far as what you were doing in your last lifetime, which spirit soul was guiding you in Krishna consciousness, that I have no idea. Mm-hmm. That you have to, when you see Krishna, if you want to, you can ask him, he can tell you.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Anything else? Oh, here it says, is it offensive to wear black and red clothes in front of the deities? Oh, that's in the Nectar of Devotion, or the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I mean, red usually indicates something in the mode of passion, black is the mode of ignorance. But I don't think it's a very important offense. In any case, we shouldn't come to the temple dressed in all black. I mean, I don't think, it's not one of the standard dhotis or saris. Do the ladies sometimes wear black saris? Anyhow, it's a little gloomy, wear a black sari. Or red is a little bit of passion. This red sari, maybe for a wedding or something, but not in front of the deities. Unless you're going to marry the deity, I don't know. Thank you. Anything else? I guess we can stop there. Thank you very much.
Question from Nirguna Prabhu, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. Hopefully it's about the class, otherwise. Okay, Nirguna.
I write.
What's that? You're right.
I sent to group.
You sent it. I have a question. Is this it? I have a question. How to convince the mind that chanting more than minimum is required in spiritual problem? The best thing to do is to do it. To think about it well, can convince the mind. Just do it. Why do you have to convince the mind? The material mind will never be convinced of anything in terms of Krishna consciousness. You have to use your spiritual intelligence to overcome the material mind. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande. See you again soon. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Спасибо большое.